Welcome to Techtastic, where we navigate the intersection of technology and business, uncovering innovations that redefine our world.
Brittany Greenfield, welcome to It's Techtastic. It is so lovely to have you here.
Thanks so much, Christian. Great to be here.
Right now you're in the security space, but you've been an entrepreneur for a while, and you're in the software supply chain security vulnerability space.
Yep.
Which is really a big market right now, a lot of innovation going on. And I just want to talk about that because I think it's interesting when you talk about a space as deep as this, it's also as broad as this, how many different touch points you can have in it.
You've hit on something I think really important. We say application security is all security now, right? That's why it's become sort of this broad amorphous space. For a long time, people were tagging it on as DevSecOps.
Yes.
We say that that's just the hairball of stuff, right? We weren't actually solving any problems with that new word. And, and it really just touches on if you need somebody to execute on a security policy that's related to code, who's doing it? The application security. And so that's why it's moved past the just scanning, which is so critical, right? All the studies show the more often you scan and then prioritize and actually do something with those scans, and the less likely you are to be breached. But it's gotten so tied up in actually development practices that it's not just about breach reduction, but actually project delivery and overall business risk reduction.
It's funny because we have all these conversations as you're out pitching. You always end up having conversations with VCs that have one paradigm that they view to be the dominant one or whatever. And we just got into a debate with one of them that's very deep in AppSec. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, 10 years ago, everybody moved, like the shift left had fully and been enabled. That's the DevSecOps thing. Yeah. And I started laughing because it's absolutely not true.
No, nobody did.
Nobody did.
Everybody said they did. Nobody did.
Yeah, nobody actually did. And why is that? And you just said it. It's you have to engage the software engineer in the remediation of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not who's finding it. That's not who's even really understands it. It's AppSec, which is usually a different division of the company. It's usually under the CIO instead of under the CTO.
Yep. So, and it wasn't just engagement. One of the things that, when I founded Wabbi 7 years ago, I realized that it was actually a translation issue. Right?
Always. Yeah.
Application security lives in this, or all security lives in this very binary world. Bad, stop. Your antivirus doesn't pop up and go, oh, this is bad-ish. Would you like me to consider it? It says, no, there's a policy. I'm going to block this. If you don't like it, call somebody and maybe they'll think about it. Right?
Yeah.
Versus development, and this is the dirty secret that we never talk about, is the fact that software is imperfect. Development lives in this world of gray of what's good enough to get out today and what can we do later, whether it's a fix or an improvement. And, and so this wasn't just like, we've got to translate the Queen's English into Texan English. And I love Texas. I've got family down there for all your audience down there. But, this was pygmy into English. And we had to find a way to ask and enable each other to respect each other's cultures without disrupting their existing workflows. And that's really what we were born out of. It's actually where our name comes from as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi.
Yeah.
Let us accept imperfections in the things that we create as a step towards enlightenment. And that's really the side of application security that we deal with. To say it's okay as long as you follow the process, including the process for when you didn't follow the process.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is I think we're actually in alignment on a lot of things, and it would be interesting to discuss like where that could go. But that's a different conversation not for the show.
Would love to have that.
Because of the way that we approached it is we're not AppSec. Honestly, we don't care.
Right.
What we are is software engineers live in this almost ivory tower world, right? But they're also the core mission critical piece of most organizations today. And they're being asked to do 1,000 things that they were never trained to do, right?
Yes.
Where app security, this is where the shift left thing completely fell apart. They don't know, they don't speak the language, and they don't care because that's not what they're getting the bonuses based on.
Exactly. So it's not just an incentive misalignment. What we did in that first generation of DevSecOps, when we tried to shift left and force it all onto the developers, was we actually ended up overwhelming both teams.
Absolutely.
With a ton of data and no actionable information. If we could make developers security SMEs, we wouldn't have a 3 million person shortage in the cybersecurity industry. And by the way, if application security folks could be developers, right? Then we might not need secure coding training, right?
Yeah.
And they're not. And the reality is, well, historically, folks that are leading AppSec teams nowadays typically were like developers that became security wonks. And as the cybersecurity industry grew, they transitioned. But the reality is most application security managers don't have any hands-on keys experience. So they don't even know the experience. So, but it's not fair. Let's separate out the specific jobs. It's not fair for us to ask somebody on either side of the equation to do something and just expect them to know how to do it. Oh, you had training this quarter. I sent you a 5,000 page manual. No. Right. That's a human problem. And that's really, where technology, and we're both looking at this, technology supports people in doing their jobs better, period. Right. And that is what we have
100%.
failed to do in solving in this shift left, DevSecOps, whatever era.
I couldn't be more in alignment with that exact view. And you said something there that was really funny to me because it comes up so frequently. Like, we want our software engineers in any organization to become domain experts too.
Correct.
We want them to understand exactly the business so they don't make silly mistakes, right?
Right.
One of the other things you said was we don't expect either one to really be able to do the other's job. I don't want a software engineer to have to become a policy wonk or a security operator. But you actually can fix the problem in a very interesting way. And that's actually what we do.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is take the stuff off the hands of the software engineer by giving the security ops person the ability to actually write the code. They don't do it themselves. Our tool writes it.
Yes.
It creates the patch for the software and submits it.
That's huge, right?
Yeah.
And it's the context, right? They need to know. And I love that, right? Because it's about facilitating better collaboration between the two teams at the end of the day. That's what we're trying to solve, to make sure they each understand the process and where the other team is in the process. We spoon feed it to them sometimes we just do it for them. And, I love that you're writing the code for them, because actually that is where you need collaboration. I think security gets the short end of the stick. Wait, both sides get the short end of the stick on different arguments, right? Security gets the short end of the stick, saying they don't care about developers or getting code out. They actually do, right? At the end of the day, they're working for an organization, and that organization's job is to get that code out for one reason or another, whether it's an internal support system or it's actually what they're delivering to the customer. But when you have 100 developers for every one application security manager or position, there's no way they can be responsive. And we actually did our 2022, we're about to release our 23 annual continuous security results, but actually 2/3 of organizations said that their security teams did reply to developer feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So the desire is there, but again, you can't meet that scale in today's environment. Yeah. The other reason I would say industry's got away for too long saying I've shifted left or I'm doing DevSecOps is they weren't actually done with their DevOps transformation.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. Today, you at least have 80% of organizations doing DevOps. And we could argue that's a separate podcast. It's a little bit of a utopian state. But what happened in the last couple of years that brought security to the forefront, why, we were able to meet and finally application security is the cool kid versus the redheaded stepchild. And, it's because as they implemented these DevOps programs, they realized their band-aided DevSecOps programs couldn't hold up. And that was a lot of Excel, a lot of first-generation vulnerability management, a lot of, over the wall. Hey, did we pass the security? Cool, we're good to go. Right? Turns out that doesn't scale.
Yeah, even a little bit. Like, it's funny because my co-founder, he was the CTO at Nike when I was brought in as the I was the entrepreneur first. They brought him in after that. Mm-hmm. And we both had kind of different jobs. Yeah. My job was to help the company become digitally native, to start moving at speed, be innovative. His job really is to de-risk what I'm doing, right? I'm there to go fast and break things and to build an organization that does that. Right. And he's there to make sure we don't break anything.
Right. And it's so important. That's actually the number one thing we talk about is de-risking the business, right? By de-risking other components. We don't talk about reduced breach risk, right? That's inherent, right? If you do good application security, you fix your vulnerabilities, great. The question is, how do we de-risk the business overall? Well, that requires us to accept, or organizations to accept, hey, I can actually probably only fix 5% of these vulnerabilities. What are the 5% that I can fix? What are the controls I can put in for the other things I can't fix, right? And again, this gets to that collaboration and making it simple for somebody to do their job without necessarily having to understand this very, very other different complex thing that's actually getting done.
So in my former life, at one point, I've done this multiple times because I still like having my hands on the keyboard on a regular basis. I like to code. It's fun for me. It's why I got into it. And I had just been brought into Nike, and had this important role that it was supposed to do with this transformation, but it meant I wanted to get in, I wanted to look at what they had and understand it. And we had software security scans that were giving us these big reports. And every frickin' team had these like really long lists of vulnerabilities, right? And I was like, well, there's got to be a cheat code here. There's got to be something I could do. So I started looking for commonalities, like, is there a particular library that's got a bunch of issues for us? Is there a particular project that's got a bunch of stuff going on, and where can I put my time? And what I kept finding over and over again was those two things came up a lot, but there was also zombie code everywhere. Like, does this even get used? Does anybody know what this does?
It's insane. And, I'm not going to say I've never worked for an organization that's had that problem, right? Because that doesn't not exist. It's actually one of the questions that we actually get and we can manage for in our orchestration is how do you make sure, so zombie code suddenly appears, right? Because either it was old and somehow got reintroduced, or somebody did some hackathon project and at the time it wasn't anything we cared about, and now it's actually on like a mission critical asset. And so we could say, hold on one second, we haven't seen this checked through our process. Somebody want to chime in here and just route out the notification? I think it really gets to this, obviously I know you deal with AI a lot, and in cyber everybody says AI this, AI that. But I think this is one of the reasons that application security was the redheaded stepchild. There's still a very human component, right? Like that zombie code existed for a reason, and maybe the knowledge hasn't been transferred, but it's the helping us ask the right questions about what's going on. And that's where, it's I actually rail on the move fast and break things all the time, because at its core, DevOps is not about moving fast and breaking things. It's about moving efficiently and taking the time to fix things at the right time. And sometimes that's a conversation.
I 100% agree with that. You probably can't read what's on that board, but I was trying to walk somebody through why these redheaded stepchildren exist in the tech space. Because, if you're talking to somebody like my wife, who's a non-tech person, she doesn't really understand the space at all. How would she? Right?
Why would she? I think some of it's also the fact that we assume our code is being secured, or the way that other things are secured, right? We all have MFA and whatnot. And like I joke, like every day I'm one step closer to taking my money out of a bank and putting it in my mattress in my barracks.
The more you know about it, the scarier it gets in some ways. Like she was trying to understand what we do. I was walking her through like what our platform does, and she goes, well, why do you need a tool to do that? Don't you guys do that? And I'm like, no. Everybody outside of this world thinks that's how it works, but it's not. It should be. That's what the implication of the word engineering being tacked onto what we do, right, is risk mitigation. That's every other engineering discipline is heavy on the risk mitigation side. Software engineering doesn't really do that, not really. And it's this process back here that's the problem.
Right.
So the thing that I talked through really quick on that is just the value of software in most organizations is really about taking the strategy and implementing that in a way that directly impacts your customer, especially if you're direct to consumer. And the problem with all the redheaded stepchildren in this space is that they're outside that process, right? Security impacts it 90 degrees, right?
Yeah. I've said this, I actually we did sort of a lunch and learn with our team and did a deep dive into the personas, and I explained profit center versus cost center, right? And product at the end of the day has always gotten the pass, because whether it's to support the delivery of the customer's end product, right? Like Starbucks with coffee, right? Hey, the customer's still getting coffee, but the technology enables it to end up in their hands, or to actually deliver some software to the customer. They are the closest tangible thing to driving value for the business. Not that security doesn't drive value, but it's really hard for security. It always has been across each segment of security. Say, here's the ROI on the thing that didn't happen because I did my job very well. And so therefore it didn't happen. ROI, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about, development. And this is where I would say development leaders have known for a long time that this was a iceberg problem, right? They weren't given a practical way to solve this, and therefore they took their profit center power and said, we would like to pass. The other side is, I think security has known for a while that they weren't giving a practical way. And, there's a large infrastructure company we work with, and they said 9 out of 10 times they were giving the pass because they couldn't even try to enforce it because they knew that they hadn't given the right information. They weren't tracking well. And so they had to just say, yep, we'll give you the pass. We're talking critical infrastructure. And that was their security. And they said, we'll take it on ourselves, right? And then that's an unhealthy cycle on its own, because then those teams get into constant firefighting mode and tons of manual work and whatnot. And you hit the nail on the head. The assumption that we do it this way has been keeping people from doing it the right way for so long.
Yeah. So my co-founder Wilf was talking about his time at a very large company. He was the CTO of also, and he said that even as the CTO, who sets policy, sets goals for the organization, he spent months negotiating resolution of these critical vulnerabilities that were in there. And he's like, I can tell somebody to do it, and I still couldn't get it done.
Yep, exactly. Right? It's the, I got 99 problems, and why is this vulnerability one? Yeah. And security just was not delivering on that because they didn't have a way to translate it.
And for me, I kept going back to the short-term versus long-term, like the existential risk of security vulnerabilities is there, right? If a Log4j type issue comes up and it exposes all your client data, you are out of business, right? But probability, and is it going to happen while I'm the CTO?
That's always the other question, Jonathan. But it's also that, and again, that's why I spend a lot of time with folks like yourselves, although I don't have to evangelize to you, talking about it's business risk, right?
Yes.
This is not about breach risk, and that's where people get scared or think that taller walls and deeper moats will do the trick, right? If we're talking about delivery risk, and in the same study that I referenced beforehand, the number one benefit of integrating security into the software development lifecycle was decreasing project delivery days. And it makes sense, right? But I think we finally have gotten to that maturity, as long as we go, you and I keep going and speaking the good word, that application security risk is business risk, and there are lots of different levers that you pull to manage that, and sometimes that is also not fixing the thing. It's not perfect.
Brittany, I've loved this conversation. I want to give you a chance to give some last advice to the audience and send them to your website so they can find out more as well.
Yep. So I would say that last word of wisdom when it comes to application security is that you've got to find a way to bridge that gap between security and development, right? If we can enable them to collaborate, then we can actually solve this problem. And as technologists, we're taught people, process, and then tools. And right now, what's been missing in the industry, people on board, they get it at this point in time. What's been missing is the process, and you've got to make the process easy for people. So those are my last words of wisdom, but I'd love to share plenty more with you. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or visit www.wabbisoft.com to learn more and just reach out. As you can tell, I always love talking about this. So be happy to continue the conversation with any of you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Techtastic. I want to thank you personally for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep exploring and stay curious.
Overwhelmed by tech debt? Discover Vala AI, the solution to tech challenges with the simplicity of a click. No engineering background? No problem. Vala AI enables anyone to effortlessly tackle tech issues, freeing up your time from tech headaches. Make tech debt vanish with Vala AI, where your tech solutions are just a click away.